forced himself into the event in order to be part of the process. And his deposition clearly shows this. The deposition of the registrar starts with about a meeting with JNUSU to discuss the bus route. This is written in HLEC report, term of reference number 1, para 2, para 3, page 2, on February 9. However, this date of meeting has been contested by the JNUSU itself. According to the JNUSU, the meeting happened on the previous day, that is February 8, 2016. This has also been corroborated by the HLEC report in the same paragraph, where it notes that as per the CCTV footage and the CCTV camera installed outside registrar's office, it is not possible to verify the individuals who went in and came out of the office. I believe there are a number of other CCTV cameras, but that has not been taken into consideration. It must be noted that the introduction of the CCTV evidence, rather than any other forms of evidence of meetings such as the signed minutes, is highly unprecedented. This actually changes the entire description of the event and the role of the acting registrar in the said event, but the HLEC makes no attempt to either verify or cross-examine this claim. Further, the acting registrar also deposed that subsequently there was a meeting at 15 past 4 in the VC's office, which was attended by the Vice Chancellor, the registrar, the Dean of Students, and the then Chief Proctor to discuss the event. However, let me remind to this August House that the same day there was also a meeting of the new Vice Chancellor with all the wardens, at which the Dean of Students and the then Chief Proctor in the capacity as a warden was also present. The meeting got over nearly at 4:10 p.m. at the convention center, after which the VC left, but the DOS, that is the Dean of Students, and the then Chief Proctor remained there for some more time with the wardens, who are willing to vouch for this inconsistency. It has also been learned that the Vice Chancellor, after completing his meeting with the wardens, had gone on to visit the School of Arts and Aesthetics. And yet again, there are evidences of suggesting so. Therefore, the claim of the acting registrar that they were meeting in the VC's chamber with all the officials mentioned at 4:15 needs to be further verified. And any rigorous inquiry process would therefore include cross-examining to bring out these inconsistencies. It is important for this House to note the fact that the JNU from the very beginning had pointed out the irresponsible and unsubstantiated statements made by the acting registrar to the press, which amounted to misrepresentation of facts, amounted to demonstration of bias, prejudging the inquiry process, and creating a hostile environment in which students felt it was unsafe for them to testify. And this further led to the unfortunate media trial of the university itself. Starting the sequence, the most important becomes the first statement by the acting registrar, which is included in the university's status report, circulated, uploaded in the website, and also submitted to the HRD ministry, which says, I quote, "The organizers invited the media to cover the program without permission from the university authorities. However, unquote. However, the Delhi magistrate's report found that it was the JNUSU Joint Secretary, the complainant, who had invited the media to cover the event without permission from the university. Subsequently, the HLEC report rectifies this and makes this correction. The report does not get into the implications of all these facts for what actually transpired on the 9th of February and does not fix the responsibility on each individual. Our colleague here will discuss with greater detail about several other inconsistencies in the report, but I would like to point out certain other misrepresentations of facts by the acting registrar being carried out. On February 14, in an interview to the press, the registrar, in reply to a question that what was the basis for university's decision to debar 8 students from academic activities, he said, and I quote, "An inquiry committee identifying the names, identified the students as raising anti-India slogans. The students who have been debarred were seen raising slogans in the video, and Kanhaiya was also seen in the video raising anti-national slogan, unquote. On the same day, the acting registrar is also reported to have said in another press interview, I quote, videos released on February 9 are authenticate, unquote. The question is, if there is indeed a reliable video footage, as is claimed by the acting registrar and also by the HLEC report, terms of reference 1, para 4, page 4, para 1, why was the same not put in the public domain, given the role of morphed videos in circulation in building up the crisis and media trial of JNU? And why did not the university condemn or issue a statement when those mock videos were being aired or being circulated in the social media? To the best of our knowledge, the university has not proceeded any legal or quasi-legal proceedings against any such media channels. Subsequently, on February 15, the registrar is reported to have again said, action taken against students in the past also, referring to some of the students against whom the suspension order were issued. Now, some of the statements which I have quoted above, these statements are only suggestive and not exhaustive in nature. But what is clear from these examples is that unsubstantiated statements made by the acting registrar repeatedly to the media, which includes the leaks of his deposition before the HLEC, the source of which we still do not know, prejudiced the whole environment and acted as a fodder to the media trial happening against the university. The latest in the series, as Rajat quoted, was the report recently on March 7, where the source, the press quoting a senior university official regarding the quantum of punishment already decided by the HLEC. Now, the third and important evidence used by the HLEC are the testimonies of some security personnel and an excerpt of the video. The depositions of Mr. O.P. Yadav, corroborated by Mr. D.P. Yadav, are mentioned in the HLEC report as the basis of ascertaining what happened in Sabarmati Dhaba. HLEC report, terms of reference 1, page 3, para 4. Regarding that, it is important to notice that the Delhi Magistrate's inquiry report has shown that the testimonies of the security personnel were tutor and lacked credibility. Read chapter 9 of Delhi Magistrate's report. In particular, the Delhi Magistrate's report states that Mr. V.P. Yadav made incorrect statements which were retracted later after cross-examination by the Delhi Magistrate in the presence of HLEC members. Similarly, Mr. O.P. Yadav's statement was found to be inconsequential, page 23 and 25 of the Delhi Magistrate's report. The HLEC report takes no cognizance of this and other findings of Chapter 9 of the Delhi Magistrate's report regarding the tutored, dubious, and in some cases, false testimonies of the security personnel. The report's description of the event of 9th February 2016 includes many things that the Delhi Magistrate probe did not find any supporting evidence for in either the available video footage or the testimonies of the witness, which also supposedly form the basis of the HLEC's recommendations. If there is any additional evidence that has been available to the HLEC, there is certainly no indication of that. And after that, we will have Arunima telling about the several other inconsistencies in the report. Thank you. Is it okay?
No, relax. We have a table crisis here. So what I'm going to do, let me just tell you right at the outset, because there's a lot of detail that Rajat and Avinash have spoken about. I will speak only to the question of procedural lapses and the kinds of inconsistencies that there is in the high-level inquiry committee report. So there are four kinds of issues at stake here. One has been already raised by Avinash. I will just remind us of that, which is to do with what was said about the event of cancellation of the event on 9th February. Now, since so many things hinge around that event and issues around that, the question of how it was cancelled, whether it was cancelled, who cancelled it, and so on and so forth becomes important. And what we find is that there is a major discrepancy between what the Dean of Students says and what the registrar has actually gone and testified. And the details of this have been raised by Avinash, so I need not reiterate that. Now, the second is the report itself. Now, what we have is just 8 pages. And that 8 pages is probably a fragment, we imagine, we don't know. Now, this 8 pages, which is called the report, comes with no recommendations whatsoever. And we will look at what the implications of this is. So we have 8 pages detailing the sequences, looking at certain kinds of ways in which processes were followed, and certain kinds of observations at the end of it. However, since this has been such an extraordinary and difficult time, everybody expected that there would be some recommendations. It has come with no recommendations. There are no formal punishments that have been announced, and as Avinash also spoke to this issue, but I think it's worth reiterating. The media has been, and Rajat also, I think, the media has been rife with information about rustication and so on, and then detractions. So this is also something that we want to bear in mind. The third kind of set of issues that I will look at briefly is the show cause notices themselves and how these have been riddled with discrepancies. And finally, what I want to go through very quickly is the substantive structure and content of this report and how these 8 pages seem to have been put together and what the problems are with that and why. Finally, after much discussion, we in the JNU TA decided that we should actually have this public event so that this esteemed panel could share their views on whether our reading of some of these things is correct or not. Now, regarding the first issue about the Dean of Students, now the Dean of Students is, and as both Rajat and Avinash said, there is an internal mechanism that is available within the university. And we expect that there's a certain degree of correctness and transparency about the manner in which that is actually conducted. Now, what is actually quite extraordinary about the manner in which the whole Dean of Students cancellation issue comes up is the idea that he is not on campus, that he is in touch with the chief security officer, and so on and so forth. There are all manners of different statements that are issued, that are circulating, that is in the realm of rumor. However, when the registrar actually deposes, he contradicts this completely. He says that the Dean of Students was available till 5 in the evening. Now, if this is indeed the case, it would have been a very easy thing to have cancelled the event. Deans and chairpersons do have these kinds of authority. Why wasn't it done? I mean, if that is the case, there is a question around that. Now let's go to the second issue, the question of the procedural lapses and the proctoral system. Now, Rajat has spoken again at length about the proctoral system. I just want to remind us about some issues in relation to that. The question for us is, and there is actually quite a detailed set of norms called the Chief Proctor's norms. In essence, the question for us is this, which is if there is an internal system available, a proctoral system, which is a statutory body, the proctor's office and so on, and there is actually a set of processes available, why was it superseded? Why didn't the proctoral committee conduct its inquiry? Why was it superseded within 24 hours and why was a high-level inquiry committee put in place? Now, since much has been said about that, I don't want to take up more time repeating those things. The second issue, which is about these 8 pages, which we now treat as the high-level inquiry committee report. Here we have to speak to this question of the show cause notices directly. Now, if you actually look at the text of these of the report itself, we see that it's been issued, but we don't know whose names these have been issued in, the show cause notices. Nowhere in these 8 pages do we get a sense of that. They do not. The report in its 8 pages, does not specify the acts of indiscipline. Right? Nor does it specify what evidence has been utilized for actually charging these students. Now, of course, in this, the most farcical part is, as I think either Rajat or Avinash mentioned, the case of the so-called 22 Anjalis. Right? Now, this is a kind of situation which even though today sitting here it might seem farcical, I think it has created an immense amount of anxiety in the campus and among students. And I must say that I was quite shocked when I came into the office the other day to find that there are several more such letters that have come to chairpersons which actually mention just one name. They do not even give the full name of the student, and they expect that all over the university it's meant to be put up by chairpersons in all the notice boards of the university. And there are 3 or 4 such notices that have come. These notices were issued on the 16th of March, as recently as this. So the supposed high-level inquiry committee is already over. Even despite that, these notices are still coming. Again, I think it is worth reiteration. It has been mentioned earlier, but I do think that it's a very, very serious matter, that much of what we have got to know in the first instance, and this is why the JNUTA has been continuously protesting, much of what we have got to know in the first instance is via the media. And then this is refuted after we protest through certain kinds of official announcements. Now, if we actually look at the show cause notices, what is the 2 elements in this, I think, which are worth mentioning. One is that some of these are completely generic in nature. The other specifically mention certain kinds of clauses, and they actually say that the student concerned is being charged with this or that or the other. The question for us is, on what basis have these charges been made? Because if you actually look at the text of the show cause notices, they only cite the rules of discipline, right? And they say that these particular rules have been violated. But they do not specify what kinds of acts were done to violate this. Now, unless and until this is actually made clear, it will be very, very difficult to actually even say whether, the minimum, even the generic kind of show cause notice can actually stand up. Now, the interesting, and I think rather more than interesting, the rather significant issue here is that finally it sort of boils down to only one rule, and this comes from the Chief Proctor's norms. It actually boils down to one rule that has been violated, and if we actually distill this down, it comes to this omnibus rule, which says that any other act that the Vice Chancellor or any other competent authority may consider indiscipline. Now, this is such a omnibus rule, right? And it has such a wide latitude, which basically means that you can actually charge a student with anything, because anything can come under any other act that the Vice Chancellor or any other competent authority may consider indiscipline. So what we are saying is that there is nothing in terms of the detailing of evidence. There's nothing in terms of the detailing of the acts of violation of rules. There's nothing there that actually adds up. All we are left with is a kind of post facto justification of the utilization of this omnibus rule. That omnibus rule's availability makes it possible to actually fit everything else into that script, and I think that is worth remembering. Now, if we go into further inconsistencies here, the text of these 8 pages of the HLEC report says that they invited students to depose. Now, what this doesn't also say, and we actually have the text of written responses that many students had sent in, it fails to acknowledge that many students had given written responses saying they were afraid. They said that already 3 students had been arrested, 8 had been suspended, and they were afraid to actually depose in front of such a high-level inquiry committee unless and until it was completely transparent what the terms of reference was, how this was going to be conducted, whether cross-examination was going to be allowed, and so on and so forth. And as we have been continuously sort of pressing the point, the principles of natural justice were in all of this being flouted. Now, what is significant here is that once the 8 pages get written up, it does not acknowledge the fact that students had written in saying that they are afraid of deposing. It needed to factor that in. It needed to actually take on account why the students were not ready in the current circumstances without transparent sets of terms of reference to come forward and actually depose in whichever manner. Now, again, in this, and we discussed this a lot, and we chose to call this a fragment because we are not even sure whether this is the entire report or not. This is what is actually available for us. It does not give, if you look at the text of the report, it does not give the details of anything. Of course, neither the written responses. It doesn't also tell us how students who had been questioned had actually answered. Now, forget the text of all of this, it does not even give us the list of the people who have actually deposed. So, in principle, the high level inquiry committee report has no detail whatsoever. It doesn't give you lists, it doesn't give you what people have said, if they have said anything, and it doesn't give you the text of students saying that they're afraid and they do not wish to respond. We are told there is one section which speaks about video and other kinds of documentary evidence and so on and so forth. It gives you no detail of that either. So, in essence, the high level inquiry committee report, which we were all waiting for anxiously, gives you no evidence whatsoever. It is just a text which gives you some bare bones of certain issues, and it is somehow organized around that omnibus rule of the vice chancellor or a competent authority having the latitude to actually define certain kinds of acts as acts of indiscipline. So, as far as we are concerned, then, the high level inquiry committee report lacks credibility. And let me sort of give you some kinds of details of why we think this is the case. One, its failure to verify and examine evidence in an impartial way. Failure to take on both the apprehensions and questions put to the HLEC in writing in response to the notices. No clear statement on what each student indicted in the report is charged with, along with the statement of evidence on the basis of which such conclusions of guilt have been arrived at. Not putting out the entire body of evidence, including video evidence, the high level inquiry committee claims to have with the report in a transparent manner. Reliance on a few persons' deposition to build the grounds to fix guilt without any provision of cross verification and cross examination. Suspending and issuing show cause notices to students who are not even mentioned once in their report. So, just to finally sum up the kinds of main issues here. One, the high level inquiry committee report has no recommendations. The second is that even though formal announcements of punishments have not been made, though all the media leaks, retractions, and so on and so forth, and all of that, there is a way in which there is a substantial sense in the university that students are standing condemned. That some were condemned right at the outset because they were arrested, they were served with show cause notices, they were suspended from academic activities, and at the end of this report, more have been condemned. So there is a way by which, without even announcing punishment, you have condemned students. And I think there is something about that this is utterly reprehensible. And what is more important is that there is nothing in the report that shows us the process through which this kind of final kind of conclusion has been arrived at. So I just want to end this, and I think my colleagues here and the JNU TA generally is in agreement with the fact that in the current circumstances, the present situation is extremely grave for our university and for our students. This kind of a high-level inquiry committee and its report is extremely alarming because it's not only the question of the immediate kind of impact that it has on the lives and academic prospects and academic futures of the students concerned, but it has very far-reaching consequences for the kind of precedent this can set for universities in the manner in which such serious issues are dealt with. Thank you very much.
I now request Sachidanand Sinha to present what is not his view.
As administration.
Well, I have to perform this so-called distinguished job today, and certainly it's not my view at all. Uh, but, all through I've been a good actor, so I'd like to enact the role of the JNU administration and sincerely put forward their views and defend it if it needed to be. Anyway, the first is, whatever the university did draws upon the often made reference to the statute, which has been, and the acts and the statutes which has been passed by the Parliament of India. And the first is the statute of the university, whose clause 1 and 2 says as follows, and it is all that the university acted upon should be seen in that light. All parts relating to discipline and disciplinary action in relation to students shall vest in the Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor may delegate all or such of his powers as he/she deems proper to the Chief Proctor and to such other persons as he/she may specify in this behalf. Thus, the Vice Chancellor was perfectly within his rights to appoint a high-level inquiry committee should he deem the circumstances to be demanding it. Further, the Chief Proctor office has not been bypassed, as it was reported here. Orders have been issued by the office, including the suspension and so-called notices. The second is the gravity of the incident that took place on the 9th of February, as stated in the university note dated 26 February 2016. On 12th February itself, the Vice Chancellor had issued a notice in which he stated the following. While the JNU community upholds the right to free debate on campus, the university strongly condemns the use of the university as a platform for activities that violate the Constitution and the laws of the land. The grave circumstances were also indicated by the case registered by the police and their request for permission to enter the campus, which the administration, in its view, and based on the legal opinion, had no legal right to deny. They state, as stated in the university note of 26th February 2016, it states, considering the serious nature of the alleged offense, permission was given to the police to investigate the matter as per the law of the land. It may be noted that the actions of the Vice Chancellor and his team in response to the situation were also endorsed and supported by the Chancellor when he visited the university on the 13th February 2016. In other words, the decision to appoint the HLEC and setting a deadline for the submission of its report was an exercise of powers vested in the Vice Chancellor and the need to respond appropriately, keeping in mind the image of the university. Once HLEC was constituted, the approach of the administration has been to trust its judgment and not interfere in any way with its proceedings. It is based on this that the decision was taken to implement without question their recommendation for academic suspension of 8 students. It is presumed that the prima facie evidence used by the committee were the Chief Security Officer's report, other documentary evidences readily available with the university, and the video footage recorded by the security staff. However, in the interest of probity, the administration eventually also decided that all video footage available with it be submitted to forensic examination, and this was made known to the teachers in a meeting. The administration, for the same reason, left it to the HLEC to organize its proceedings and urged everyone concerned to cooperate with the process. There was no reason for the students to stay away from it, and the administration tried its best to persuade them to cooperate. Despite the fact that it felt that all its actions thus far were justified, the administration responded positively to the requests from the teachers and broadened the HLEC by including 2 new members. Thus, making it more orderly, from the Trimurti to Panch Parameshwar. The terms of reference of the committee were, of course, this was not there in the report. Well, it was getting boring for me. The terms of reference of the committee were also made clear to it, as can be seen from the mention of these terms of reference in the final report. However, on the question of revocation and of the suspensions, as well as the issue of starting the inquiry afresh, following the addition of 2 members, the administration, as before, adopted the approach of leaving it to the committee rather than giving it any directives. No recommendation for revocation of suspensions was received from the committee, and therefore the administration was not in a position to take any such action. The committee, however, did ask for more time to complete its proceedings, and this was accepted by the administration, so that the final report was received only on 11th March 2016. Once the final findings of the HLEC were received, the administration again has gone by these findings, and also followed the due process by issuing show cause notices to the students found by the committee to have been in violation of rules of discipline, and citing the specific rules they were found to be in contravention of. A copy of the report was also provided to each of the accused to enable them to frame their responses to the show cause notices. The report was not, however, released to the public, since this was not the usual practice. The administration also extended by 2 days the deadline for submission of the replies to the show cause notices, so that the students had enough time to examine the report and formulate their responses. As regards the concern expressed about the conduct of particular officials, the administration did not feel it would be appropriate to respond without hearing their views either. Following this, measures that were considered appropriate were taken. The administration urged everyone not to take anything that comes in the media as coming from the administration. Only that was said by the VC or in official press statements issued by the university should be taken into consideration to determine the university's stand. The university administration is also looking into the complaints about the incidents in Pashchimabad residential complex, and will take appropriate steps. When concerns were expressed about police presence on the campus, the administration also wrote to the police regarding the apprehensions of the university community, and extracted an assurance that police entry will be only when absolute necessary and after prior intimation. It may be noted that subsequently the police did not enter the campus to arrest students. Also, the VC, in a press release issued on 26 March 2016, said the following: that the administration also stands for upholding the culture of free debate and discussion,